Have you ever wondered how far someone's arrogance can go when that person believes that money buys respect, authority, and even the right to humiliate others? Imagine a modern tech office, the kind that looks like it's straight out of a movie. Glass walls, giant screens displaying real-time graphs, employees walking briskly, each focused on goals, deadlines, and numbers worth millions. It's in this sophisticated environment that everything begins. A place where innovation, power, and status go hand in hand, and where often ego speaks louder than character. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you more than you imagine. The doors open and he enters, a well-known billionaire in the market, accustomed to being obeyed without question. His presence dominates the space. His voice is firm, too loud for a professional environment, as if everyone there should stop what they are doing just to listen to him. He demands attention, demands results, speaks as if he is absolutely certain that he is in charge of everything and everyone. Eyes turn to him, some out of respect, others out of pure fear. It is the kind of power that intimidates, and that usually crushes those who seem lesser. A few meters ahead, almost invisible to his eyes, stands a black woman, discreet, with a calm posture and attentive gaze. She observes the movement without haste, without anxiety, like someone who understands exactly where she is stepping. She doesn't raise. Her voice doesn't try to draw attention, doesn't interrupt. Even so, something about her exudes confidence. But at that moment that doesn't matter. For the billionaire, she simply shouldn't be there. Have you ever experienced this? Being ignored as if your presence had no value whatsoever? The atmosphere changes subtly, almost imperceptibly, but heavily enough to cause discomfort. He hurls curt comments, skewers questions, and gives abrupt orders that sound more like attacks than instructions. He walks past her as if she were part of the furniture, as if her existence in that space were a mistake. Some employees notice, exchange embarrassed glances, but remain silent. No one reacts. No one intervenes. This is how many humiliations begin, not with shouts, but with contempt. The woman remains calm. She doesn't justify herself. She doesn't defend herself. She doesn't lower her head. But she also doesn't confront him. This silence is more unsettling than any sharp response. And it is precisely there that something begins to break down within that scene. Because the more he speaks, the clearer it becomes that he doesn't know who he's dealing with. And the more composed she remains, the stronger the feeling grows that there is something hidden behind that serene demeanor. Perhaps you've seen stories like this before. Or perhaps you've experienced something similar. Situations where someone judges you by your appearance, by the color of your skin, by the way you dress, simply because they think they have more power. Stories of reverse humiliation, of poetic justice, of social upheaval that make us hold our breath and think, this isn't going to end well for the person doing the humiliation. And it really won't. While the billionaire continues to assert his presence, certain that he controls everything in that tech office, small details go unnoticed by him, but not by those who observe attentively. A respectful glance here, a strategic silence there. Subtle clues that this woman is not there by chance. And when the truth begins to approach, the atmosphere becomes heavy, almost suffocating, as if everyone senses that something big is about to happen. Take a deep breath and stay with me, because this story is only just beginning, and the next moment changes everything. And perhaps that's exactly why this scene affects us so much, because on some level it touches on a collective wound. How many times have confident, competent people with rich history's been silenced before even having a chance to speak? How many times has judgment come before respect? While this billionaire continues to walk around the office as if he owns everything, the space, the time, and even the people, the feeling of injustice grows along with the viewer. It's impossible not to put yourself in her place. It's impossible not to feel the weight of that contempt. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below about what has touched you the most so far. Perhaps a similar situation you've experienced, something you witnessed, or even a feeling this story evoked. When you comment, you're not just writing a sentence, you're giving voice to experiences that many people have lived through in silence, and that matters more than it seems. Meanwhile, the woman remains there, steadfast, observing every detail. The billionaire speaks, gestures, imposes his will. He believes he's in control, that he knows exactly who he's dealing with. But what he doesn't realize is that sometimes true power doesn't need to be announced. It simply exists, and the more he tries to downplay it, the more evident the contrast between arrogance and confidence becomes. If this story is already captivating you, leave a like now. This shows that this type of content needs to continue to exist and helps the video reach more people who also need to hear this message. Here, nothing happens by chance. Every silence she speaks carries intention. Every word he says reveals more about who he is. And the viewer begins to understand that this isn't just a story about a billionaire humiliating a black woman in a tech office. It's about something bigger, about respect, about underestimating others, about the exact moment when the truth begins to draw near, even when no one has yet dared to say it aloud. And if you feel that this kind of story needs to be told, subscribe to the channel. It's not just to keep up with future videos, but to be part of a community that values poetic justice, social upheavals, and stories that truly provoke reflection. Your subscription is what keeps this space alive, growing, and reaching more people with narratives that give voice to those who are almost never heard. Because what comes next is not just a revelation, it's the moment when everything that seemed solid begins to tremble, and the truth finally finds its way to emerge. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because it's precisely here that the story ceases to be merely uncomfortable and begins to touch on a boundary that many people know all too well. The billionaire doesn't lower his tone. On the contrary, he begins to question aloud why that woman is there. It's not an innocent question. It's laden with judgment, assumption, and an arrogant certainty that she doesn't belong in that space. He doesn't look at her resume, doesn't ask her name, doesn't show genuine curiosity. He decides before he knows, and that decision says much more about him than about her. The office, which once seemed merely modern and bustling, now feels heavy. The clatter of keys fades. Side conversations cease. Some employees feign concentration, others look away, as if they know something is wrong but don't know how or if they can intervene. Well-dressed executives remain motionless, trapped between their positions and the fear of contradicting someone powerful. This collective silence is not neutral. It amplifies the humiliation. It's as if each second without reaction confirms the idea that this type of behavior still finds a place to exist. He continues. He says that this isn't a place for just anyone. He talks about standards, profiles, levels, words that, on the surface, seem professional, but which carry a cruel hidden truth when used in that way. Embarrassment spreads through the room like a slow wave. Some faces tense up, others show vicarious shame, and the woman at the center of it all remains silent. A silence that is not weakness. It is restraint, it is choice, it is awareness. There is something profoundly transformative in this moment, because public humiliation doesn't just affect the direct target, it exposes an entire mentality, a way of seeing the world based on superficial hierarchy, on appearances, on financial power as the absolute criterion of value. And those who witness it feel it in their bodies. The tightness in their chest, the contained anger, the urge to interrupt the scene. It's impossible not to remember similar situations, whether at work, at school, in social settings, or even within one's own family. The abuse of power has many faces, but it almost always begins the same way. Someone placing themselves above others while trying to push them down. He asks again what she's doing there, this time impatiently, as if her mere presence were a personal affront. There's a tone of irony, perhaps even mockery. He smiles slightly, expecting support, expecting laughter, expecting agreement. But what he receives is an even denser silence, because even without knowing the whole truth, something inside those people begins to realize that this scene won't end as he imagines. The woman takes a deep breath, not out of fear, but out of control. Each of her decisions at that moment is part of a journey much larger than that room. A journey built behind the scenes, in difficult choices, in long nights, in silent confrontations. The transformation she carries is not visible to those who judge too quickly. And that is precisely what makes the moment so impactful, because while he tries to reduce her to a stereotype, she carries an entire story that has yet to be revealed. The audience senses the injustice because they recognize the pattern. How many times have people been underestimated before they even opened their mouths? How many important decisions have been made based on prejudice disguised as technical criteria? This scene isn't just about an arrogant billionaire. It's about a system of thought, a mentality that confuses authority with arrogance and leadership with intimidation. And when this kind of mentality is exposed, something begins to crumble. He takes another step forward, invading her space, as if wanting to reaffirm his dominance. But the effect is the opposite. The further he advances, the more fragile his posture becomes, because true power doesn't need to shout, it doesn't need to humiliate, it doesn't need to prove anything in public. And this contradiction begins to become clear to those who observe attentively. The tension reaches an almost unbearable point. The entire room seems suspended in time. There's a feeling that something is about to emerge, as if the truth is very close to breaking through the surface. And even without words, the woman conveys something powerful. She knows exactly who she is. And you know that this moment, however uncomfortable it may be, is part of something bigger, of an impact that hasn't yet fully revealed itself, but is already beginning to take shape in the air. This is the kind of situation that changes people, that exposes beliefs, forces reflection, and leaves marks, not only for those who are humiliated, but also for those who humiliate, and for those who watch in silence. Because every public humiliation carries a choice to continue reproducing the pattern or to allow something to transform from that point on. And it is at this exact point, at this emotional limit, that the story begins to turn from within. Comment below when you're finished with this part, writing. That makes sense to me. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because it's precisely when she chooses silence that the story begins to gain another layer. While he continues talking excessively, trying to fill all the space with words, orders, and assumptions, she responds little, sometimes only with a look, other times with a calculated pause. She doesn't defend herself, she doesn't explain herself, she doesn't try to prove anything. And this silence, far from weakening her, creates something powerful, curiosity, because the observer begins to wonder why. Why would someone faced with such clear humiliation choose not to react? There's a hidden strength in someone who doesn't feel the need to constantly justify themselves. And this begins to become evident in the details. The way she observes her surroundings isn't that of someone lost or intimidated. It's the gaze of someone who knows the space, who understands the inner workings, who knows exactly how everything functions there. Her eyes scan the room with calm attention, as if each screen, each person, each corner of that office were part of a larger story she knows well. This posture doesn't match the image the billionaire tries to project. Some employees notice this. They don't say anything, but there's a subtle respect in how they position themselves when she passes by. A slight adjustment of posture, a quick glance that mixes recognition and caution. These are almost invisible signs, but they carry meaning. Anyone who has experienced intense corporate environments knows True respect isn't staged. It appears in small gestures, in shared silences, in the way someone is observed when they think no one is looking. Meanwhile, the billionaire interprets the silence as submission. For him, the absence of reaction confirms his own narrative. He believes he won, that he intimidated her, that he put everyone in their place. This interpretation reveals a lot about his mentality, a mentality that confuses noise with power and aggression with leadership. He doesn't realize that sometimes silence isn't a lack of response, but a strategy. It's not fear, it's a choice, and every choice carries an intention. There's a specific moment that subtly changes the atmosphere. An older executive, someone clearly important, meets her gaze for a few seconds longer than usual. It's not an ordinary look. There's recognition there. There's history. There's something unspoken that passes too quickly to be explained, but is strong enough to alter the energy of the room. Those who notice feel it. Those who don't understand keep talking. This is the part of the journey where the hidden truth begins to draw closer. It doesn't fully reveal itself yet, but it leaves traces. Its silence begins to unsettle because it breaks the logic of humiliation. Normally, the humiliated person is expected to react, defend themselves, apologize, or shrink away. When this doesn't happen, something goes off script, and when the script fails, the power structure begins to tremble. She stands there, steadfast, like someone who has made difficult decisions before, decisions that shaped her path, her transformation, her way of seeing the world. This moment is not new to her. Perhaps it is just another one among many others in which she was underestimated. The difference is that now, the impact is about to be much greater, because everything that was built in silence behind the scenes is beginning to press to the surface. The billionaire, without realizing it, reveals even more about himself. He talks about control, results, money, as if these words were enough to define human value. But the more he insists, the clearer the distance becomes between someone trying to impose authority and someone who simply carries it. True authority doesn't need explaining. It sustains itself. And this begins to resonate in the environment, even if no one verbalizes it. Her silence is not empty. It is full of meaning, full of untold stories, of revelations yet to come to light, of a journey that doesn't fit into the quick labels she tries to attach. And the viewer begins to feel that something is about to change, not through direct confrontation, but through revelation, not through shouting, but through truth. There's a different kind of tension now. It's no longer just indignation, it's anticipation, as if everyone is caught between what they believe they are seeing and the unsettling feeling that something much bigger is hidden there. Silence, once interpreted as weakness, is beginning to be perceived as contained power. And when contained power meets exposed arrogance, the clash is inevitable. This part of the story forces us to reflect on how often we confuse reaction with strength, how often we judge someone by the volume of their voice, the speed of their response, their need to assert themselves. Transformation begins when we realize that not all power announces itself. Some simply wait for the right moment to reveal themselves, and that moment, still invisible, is already beginning to take shape in the air of that room. Write in the comments when you feel that this part resonated with you. I'm on this journey too. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because it is precisely at this moment that everything that was only suggested transforms into a revelation. The atmosphere, which was already tense, is interrupted by a voice that doesn't ask permission, but also doesn't need to raise its voice. There is no aggression, there is clarity. Someone approaches with firm steps, calls her name respectfully and says something simple, direct, almost protocol-driven. And it is in this seemingly ordinary second that the entire room freezes. The sentence is short, but the impact is immediate. She's not there by chance. She's not there as a visitor. She's not there as someone out of place. She is the founder of the startup, the mind behind the technology that moves billions, the person who made decisions behind the scenes, who built each stage of that journey, who defined the company's mindset from day one. The hidden truth, which until then circulated only in gestures and silences, finally reveals itself without needing adjectives. The effect is almost physical. The sound of the air conditioning seems louder. The screens continue to display numbers, but no one looks. The employees, previously motionless with embarrassment, are now motionless with shock. Some blink slowly, as if they need time to reorganize everything they have just heard. Others avert their gaze from the billionaire, not out of fear, but because of a new awareness that is taking hold there. The invisible hierarchy has just been reversed. The billionaire tries to process it. First comes disbelief, a nervous smile, too short to be sincere. Then, the attempt to regain control, as if he could go back a few minutes in time and choose different words. But it's too late. The decisions have been made. The sentences have been spoken. The stance has been exposed. And now, facing the ultimate authority he tried to diminish, only the weight of his own arrogance remains. She doesn't change her expression. She doesn't smile triumphantly. She doesn't react with sarcasm. She doesn't retaliate with sharp words. She simply confirms, with few words, what has just been revealed. Her voice is calm, confident. It's the same calm that sustained all the previous silence. The difference is that now everyone understands the reason. It wasn't hesitation, it was mastery. It wasn't fear, it was strategy. This is the moment when poetic justice materializes without spectacle. There are no shouts, there is no humiliation in return. Power simply shifts sides because the truth has arrived. And when the truth arrives, it doesn't need to impose itself. It occupies the space naturally. The billionaire's ego, once inflated, begins to wither before something that no amount of money can buy: legitimacy. The impact goes beyond the theater. It goes beyond the characters. Those who watch feel the shift from within, because this revelation isn't just about positions or companies. It's about mindset, about how many times the world confuses appearance with ability, about how many decisions are made based on prejudices disguised as logic, about how many incredible stories remain hidden because someone decided to judge too quickly. On the faces around them, micro-expressions emerge that are difficult to define: relief, shame, admiration, perhaps all at once. Some employees seem to breathe for the first time since the tension began. Others look at the woman with a new kind of respect, now explicit, not because she has just proven herself, but because they have finally been able to see what has always been there. The previous silence takes on a different meaning. It ceases to be absence and becomes preparation. The billionaire, now smaller than when he entered, tries to adjust his posture. The words that once flowed easily now stumble. He realizes that his authority in that space was borrowed, conditional, superficial. And he realizes this in the harshest way possible, in public, in front of those he tried to intimidate. The fall of the ego is not noisy, it is silent. And perhaps that is why it is so profound. This moment redefines everything. The relationships, the perceptions, the atmosphere, the company's very narrative, because revelations like this don't just correct a momentary injustice, they leave marks, they reprogram environments, they force reflections that continue to resonate long after the scene ends. And those who witness it understand that it's not about revenge, but about alignment, about putting everything in its proper place. The woman remains at the center, not because she seeks attention, but because truth naturally placed her there. Her journey, built on difficult decisions, constant transformation, and choices made away from the spotlight, finally finds its point of intersection with the present. And this encounter changes everything around her, even without apparent effort. It's the kind of impact that doesn't need to be announced to be felt. The tension is different now. It's no longer about humiliation. It's about consequences. about what happens when someone is confronted, not with harsh words, but with reality. And it is in this atmosphere, still dense, still laden with meaning, that the story continues to unfold, because every true revelation opens space for something greater to move. Write in the comments when this shift makes sense to you. That makes sense to me. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because after the revelation, nothing is ever exactly the same again. The silence that fills the room is no longer one of tension or expectation, but of assimilation. Each person there needs to internally reorganize what has just happened. The billionaire, now visibly embarrassed, avoids direct eye contact. His shoulders, once open and dominant, seem more closed. His posture changes without him realizing it. There are no more long speeches, no more dismissive orders. The overconfidence gives way to an almost uncomfortable caution. The fall is not public in the sense of spectacle, but it is profound in its impact. She, on the other hand, remains steadfast. There is no arrogance in her demeanor. There is no need to reinforce who she is or what she has built. Her presence speaks for itself. Every gesture is restrained, every word is measured. It's as if that situation were not a destination, but just another moment in a long journey, marked by difficult decisions, silent confrontations, and a transformation that began long before that encounter. This difference in posture says it all. While he tries to deal with his own wounded ego, she remains true to who she has always been. The entire environment learns something there, even if no one verbalizes it. It learns that authority isn't measured by the volume of one's voice, but by the consistency of one's choices. It learns that leadership isn't imposed through fear, but sustained by respect. It learns that status can open doors, but doesn't guarantee character. And perhaps the hardest lesson of all, it learns that judging by appearances is a lazy way of seeing the world, and almost always leads to misguided decisions. This scene resonates because it's not uncommon. It repeats itself on different scales every day. In job interviews, in meetings, in classrooms, in environments where someone decides who deserves to be heard before even listening. How many people are underestimated daily for not fitting into a pre-established mold? How many talents remain hidden because someone confused simplicity with inability? These questions aren't confined to the story. They resonate with the viewer because they touch on real experiences, personal memories, wounds that haven't yet fully healed. His embarrassment stems not only from the revelation itself, but from the mirror held up to him. A mirror that reveals choices, attitudes, a mindset built on privilege and fragile certainties. Arrogance, when exposed to the truth, quickly loses its power because it depends on the illusion of superiority. And when that illusion crumbles, all that remains is the emptiness of someone who realizes they confused power with worth. She doesn't need to say anything to reinforce the lesson. Her journey has already done that. The fact that she got there, that she built something so great without needing to announce it, proves that appearances have never been a limit. What defines someone are the decisions made when no one is watching, the work done behind the scenes, the ability to persist even when recognition doesn't come. This is a truth that is unsettling because it demands a change in mindset. It demands humility. It demands a willingness to see beyond the surface. The impact of this moment doesn't end in the room. It spreads. Each person there carries that experience outside, consciously or unconsciously. Some rethink their behavior. Others remember situations where they remained silent in the face of similar injustices. Some feel relieved to see the truth emerge. Some feel exposed for having agreed to the previous silence. All of this is part of the process, because stories like this aren't just for entertainment. They provoke internal shifts, and perhaps that's the greatest lesson that resonates. It's not about defeating someone, but about revealing something, revealing how hasty judgments distort realities, revealing how blinding arrogance is, revealing that respect should never be conditional on positions, money, or appearance. When this happens, something begins to stir within the observer. A silent question arises. In what moments have I also judged before knowing? In what situations have I failed to recognize the value of others? This reflection is not comfortable, but it is necessary, because all transformation begins with discomfort. It begins when we are forced to reconsider beliefs, patterns, and habits. History doesn't point fingers but invites awareness. It shows that the world changes when we change the way we look at things, and that small changes in mindset can generate profound impacts, both individually and collectively. The atmosphere still carries remnants of tension, but now there's something new in the air, a sense of adjustment, of alignment, of truth exposed. And when the truth emerges, it doesn't end the story. It opens new layers, because there's always an aftermath. What happens to those who were confronted? What changes in those who were underestimated? How does this moment reverberate in the next steps of this journey? It is in this space of reflection, still alive, still pulsating, that history continues to breathe, ready to reveal consequences that go far beyond that specific moment. Comment below when this message resonates with you writing, "That makes sense to me." If you've made it this far, it's because this story resonated with you on some level. Perhaps it reminded you of a situation you experienced. Perhaps it sparked a reflection that's still echoing now. This channel exists precisely for that reason, to bring stories that go beyond entertainment, that help us see the world with more awareness, more sensitivity, and a different perspective on power, respect, and human value. If this content resonated with you today, it makes sense to subscribe and stay tuned, following stories that follow this same line. And if you want to leave a sign that you've made it to the end, write in the comments, "This message was for me." There's no need to explain anything beyond that. Sometimes a simple sentence says it all. The like also helps strengthen that connection and shows that this type of story deserves to continue being told. Now there's a video over here that complements this topic and delves even deeper into this reflection. Click and continue reading it.